Well, here's another saga of the Little Rebel of a Gap. Just funny stories of my father growing up in Cumberland Gap during the Depression. And if he had no bad luck, he'd have no luck at all. So here's another little story. Now, all these little stories took place, for the yous that don't know, in a place called Cumberland Gap. This is where 3 states come together: Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia. And this old place has a lot of history, but this is the place where the stories just took place at. This is what it looked like. And back then, still looks that way for hundreds and hundreds of years. But anyway, this little story takes place in the Gap. Here's a picture of Cumberland Gap today, what it looks like. Just a peaceful little community, a sleepy place, but it's so beautiful. And back then, he growed up in a little place outside of Gap. Here's a picture back in the 30s of looking towards Tipple, off the pinnacle, off of Cumberland Mountain. A little old place down through here to the right. And he growed up in a place called Tipple, a little old road. This is the community of what it looked like. Just a little old farming community. And he growed up in a house like this. They didn't have much. His dad was a logger, so he never got to see him a lot of times. He was always in the logwoods. I can remember him telling me when he was born, in the first house they lived in had a dirt floor. But anyway, all this right here is the old Gap back in the 20s and 30s, a picture, aerial picture of what it looked like back in that day. So he would walk to school every day. It was probably almost 2 miles, 1.5 miles. That's what he'd tell me. He'd walk up this road into the Gap, going to school every day. Now this happened in the wintertime, dead cold of winter. In an area like this is where the school was, located here. And the place where the event happened to him at was right here. An old fence here, an old pipe fence. So he'd walk to the school, and the school looked something like that, like this at that time. Just an old schoolhouse for the community. Now this is what it looks like today. It's now the city courthouse, police station. That's what it looks like to this day. It's a nice place. Been there a long time. Well, anyway, he'd get to school, and he didn't like school, he said, but he had to go. He'd done what he had to do. And he'd sit there in class and try to learn all he could. And during lunch, in the warm months, they would get out in recess and lunchtime, and they'd play games. All the kids would, out behind the old schoolhouse. But keep in mind, they didn't do this now. It was dead winter. It was cold. And this time, lunchtime, he'd go down to the stores with his friends. He didn't have a penny to his name, so they would share with him a little bit, and he wanted something to drink so bad. So when he's walking back here, there's an old fence here. He was real thirsty, he said. Now, it surprised me is this old pipe fence is still here today. It's been there a long time. This is the fence right here between the store and the schoolhouse. He was walking back. He said he was real thirsty, real thirsty. And here's what it looks like from the pinnacle where it's located. School's on the left. That little store he come from is on the right there on the corner. But anyway, he said he was so thirsty. And that fence had a frosty coating on it. So he thought he'd just lick on it a little bit to quench his thirst. And about right here, standing straight up. And he was about 7 years old, he said. And as soon as he touched it, that was it. He was stuck there. And his friends was just laughing just lapping herself to death at him. And he couldn't get loose. No matter how hard he tried, he could not pull himself loose from that. He said, this is a big mistake, but he couldn't do nothing about it. He was stuck. Well, they went on back to school, and they wanted that little old lost boy at. Well, he's stuck out there on the pole. Well, the teacher went out there with some warm water and poured on his tongue and got him loose. Well, he sat there in that class there with an old rag or something, he said, wrapped around his tongue. It was raw where he pulled the meat off of it, trying to get loose. And he had all kinds of little old funny stories like that. He said that was so embarrassing to him. So embarrassing. But anyway, that's another little saga. Now the Gap today looks like this right here. Little old place. There's a little old store there on the right. Used to be a cafe. It's a post office now. That's what it looks like as we drive by it here. And we come back through it here around the block, and you can see it on the left, right there. And right here where the X is the old fence. Been there a long time, old rail fence. And this is where he'd walk between the store and all the way up here to the schoolhouse. The old schoolhouse is here just coming inside. They fixed it up nice. So that's that story. Now my dad, he told me a lot of little funny stories, and there's more to come. But right here, I'm sad to say that he passed on in 2017. And here's some of the little stories I've already got out, if you've not seen any of them. They're nice little stories. So, I want to thank y'all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. So, God bless everyone, and I'll see you next time.